Oh, welcome. Thank you very much for coming. Who's here for the Mindset's first time? Okay. Fantastic. It's great. So my name is Mike George, and I have the honor of spending a little bit of time with you this morning. And the title of this particular presentation is The Journey from Ignorance to Enlightenment. Maybe it's useful for me to start just by saying when I use the word ignorance, I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. You know, when people say, you ignorant so-and-so. When I use the word ignorance, I really mean a kind of lack of awareness. And it's like we're all a little bit unaware, essentially, of what's going on, not outside of us so much, but what's going on inside. And it's that lack of awareness that eventually triggers our spiritual journey. And the end of the journey is something called enlightenment. And a very simple definition of enlightenment is realizing what is true for you. And what is true for you is very different from what is true to the next person from moment to moment to moment. So I'm going to describe the journey to you in 7 stages and propose that for everyone who makes this journey, they'll go through each one of these phases, each one of these stages. And as I take you through them, you might kind of recognize the stage you're at this particular time in your own life. Stage 1 is called the wanderer. And the wanderer is the person who wanders around the world, kind of looking for, I guess, what motivates everything everyone does. It motivates where we go, what we buy, who we want to be with. The one thing that motivates everything, and that's the big search for happiness. And most people, they have a very long wandering phase. And the reason for that is we get 2 things mixed up. We get pleasure and happiness mixed up. We think pleasure is happiness. And so when we get pleasure from the world, we think, well, this is the only happiness in life. But with pleasure, which is a high, of course, you get a high when there's some kind of pleasure. But where there's a high, there must be a low. And the lows we can tolerate for most of our life. But sometimes, for some people, the lows get so low and they get longer and they get deeper and they get harder to come out of. And you know someone who's finding it hard to come out of their lows is because they spend most of their life wearing a long face. A bit like some of your faces now. And eventually the lows get so low, and the low is another word for suffering or for stress or for unhappiness basically, that one day we throw up our hands and we say, I can't take this anymore. I need to change something. And that's when you move into the second stage of the journey from ignorance, unawareness, to enlightenment. And that second stage is when you become a conscious seeker. You become a seeker of truth, wisdom, some method, some technique, someone who can tell me why I am suffering and why I am so regularly unhappy and how do I change it. And that's when we go consciously seeking. So we don't seek so much for happiness. Yeah, that's still a bit there, but we buy a book, we go to a seminar, we go and see a specialist, or we talk to a guru, or we come to some nice green pastures in the English countryside on a summer Sunday's afternoon to get some insights and wisdom. What do I need to do to change? And so the seeker probably one day has one very big realization, and it's usually the first realization of the seeker. And it goes like this. For most of our life, most of us are operating from one particular belief. And that belief is, it's not me, it's them that's making me feel this way. It's that, it's them, it's her, it's him that's making me upset, making me stressed, making me angry. And the day arrives in most people's lives eventually when we realize the truth. It's not them, it's me. And this is called self-responsibility. And this is the big breakthrough moment. The moment you realize, actually, it's me that's responsible for what I think and feel 100% of the time. And that's when you begin to take your power back. And that's when you move into stage 3 on the journey. And you consciously realize, hey, I have something I need to learn here, and it's very deep. And you become what's called a student. And you become a student of not academic things, but a student in the real school. You know the real school in life? The true school? Some people say life is the school, but actually the real school is your consciousness. Because that's where everything begins. That's where you create, make your decisions, have your visions, and that's where you make feelings and generate emotions and have thoughts. And so you realize, hey, I need to go back and learn about how I work, how I operate, who I am as a being of consciousness. As a student, though, there's a moment that comes when someone asks you, what are you doing? What are you studying? Or maybe someone asks you, can you help me? I've got a bit of a problem too. I'm pretty unhappy all the time. And that's your invitation to share what you've been realizing as a student of consciousness, a spiritual student, if you like. And the moment you share, the moment you give, the moment you help, the moment you guide someone else, there's what's called a crossover moment. And it's another realization that occurs. In the moment and the process of sharing your own wisdom, your own realization, it begins to bring up more insight, more realizations. And that's when I kind of use that ancient piece of wisdom. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. And it goes like this. How do I know what I know till I hear what I have to say? Have you ever been talking with friends of an evening, just relaxing, and then you come out with something very deep and very profound, and they go, wow, I didn't know you knew that, and you're thinking, wait a minute, actually, I didn't know I knew that. And that's the moment you begin to realize that everything you need to know, you already know. It's already within your consciousness. I don't mean knowledge of how the world works, but insight and knowledge of how you work and how to be yourself, how to be the powerful, authentic you, how to make yourself happy from inside out. And that's the crossover moment when that realization occurs, that actually we're not here to learn, we're here to unlearn, to open the floodgates, to allow our own wisdom, our own knowledge to come to the surface, to come from inside out. And that's when you move into stage 4, which is the teacher, or the guide, or the helper, or the coach. But you make yourself available to help others to do what you're doing. And the more you do that, the more you wake up yourself. It's like a paradox, really. The more you help others, the more you engage, then the more you wake up, the more realizations you have yourself. And remember, enlightenment is just progressively realizing what is true for you. It's not one moment, it's a process. Now, as you're teaching, guiding, sharing, helping, whatever way you do it, there's also a moment that occurs when actually you notice that you're saying a few deep and sharing a few insights, but actually there's a gap between what I say and what I'm actually doing. In other words, I'm telling others about, hey, wait a minute, you're responsible. It's not the government that's making you upset. It's not your parents. It's not the kids. It's not even the boss that's bothering you. It's you. But as a teacher, you notice that you are still a little bit bothered. So there's a gap between what you say and what you're doing. And that's the moment when your authenticity awakens and you realize, I need to move into stage number 5, and you become a serious practitioner. You start to really practice what you are sharing with others, because you realize it's a little bit more subtle than what you thought. And as you build serious practice into your life, whether you call it spiritual practice or meditative practice, whatever that kind of practice is, as you build that into your life seriously, not just occasionally, once or twice a year, retreat here, little seminar there, but when you build it in on a daily basis, you gradually transition into stage number 6. And stage number 6 is the phase, the stage of mastery. And you become a master. Not a master with a position or a title, or even someone recognizes you as that, but you become a master of the art of being your own powerful self. In other words, you've kind of noticed that although you say, hey, listen, I'm going to stop complaining, because when I'm complaining, I'm giving my power away. And actually, you notice you're still thinking a little complaint here and there. And you notice, well, it's not good to blame, because when you blame someone, you're also disempowering yourself. But mentally, I'm still thinking it's their fault, it's their fault. And so the master is someone who becomes the master of the arts of being ourselves. And the mastering of the art of being ourselves is when you can stay very peaceful and non-judgmental when everyone around you is in chaos and blaming everyone else. You're a master when you can master the art of being compassionate towards others when everyone else wants to condemn others. You're becoming the master when you're the master of your own joy. Your joyfulness doesn't come from anything that anyone says or gives you or any event in the world. Your joy comes from inside out, comes from the heart. And when you can do that, then you become the master of your own consciousness. Nothing more, nothing less of what you're doing within yourself. And as you're in the process of becoming the master, there's a day, a moment, a period when you notice, actually, I've just realized all my sorrow, all my suffering, all my unhappiness, all my grumpiness, all my complaints and blames and moans, they all have one root cause. They all come from one mistake that we all learn to make in our own consciousness. And it's the mistake, well, it's our oldest and dearest friend, otherwise known, 3 letters beginning with E, as the ego. And the ego, simplest definition, is just a mistake. It occurs when I mistake myself for something that I'm not. In other words, I build my identity, my sense of who I am, out of what I am not. And that's actually what we're taught to do from the moment we arrive. By mum and dad, by the teachers, by the culture around us, by those wonderful marketing people that we surrender to every day. We allow them to teach us to build our sense of who I am out of something in the world, out of something that I'm not. And that's what the ego is. And when you do that, then everything that you build your sense of self out of, you're building it out of things that change. Money comes and goes, people come and go, jobs come and go, clothes come and go, cars come and go, everything changes and everything decays. But we learn to build our sense of self out of those things. And so if we do that, and we know they're going to change, that they're going to eventually go, we create the 3 emotions of suffering: sadness, fear, and anger. And these are the 3 emotions of unhappiness. And that's why we create them, because we create an ego. And the day I realize that is the day of the final enlightenment. And it's the day when I realize I'm not what I do, I'm not what I look like in the mirror in the morning, thank goodness. I'm not what I possess, I'm not my family, I'm not my nationality, I'm none of those things. I'm just a being of consciousness on my journey through those things. And ultimately, the ultimate moment of enlightenment is the realization I am nothing. Not nothing, but nothing. Or no one. And only when I realize that, paradoxically, do I restore my true sense of who I am. But I'm not thinking it. I don't think, oh, now I know who I am. I'm just being my true, authentic self. In essence, I'm just the I that says I am. Anything after I am is not me. I play the game. I don't walk through passport control at the airport going, no, this is not really me. No, don't take that seriously. I'm just an I. No, I play the game. I speak the international language of labels. And I, inside at the same time, carry the awareness, the consciousness that I'm not anyone. I am no one. And now you're looking at me very strangely. Who is this guy? So the essence of the journey, 7 steps. And I'm not quite sure which step, phase you're going through, but maybe you can get a sense of what might happen. Step number 1, wanderer, wandering the world, looking for happiness. Step number 2, you realize it's not in the world, and you begin consciously seeking, not on the outside, but inside, in your own consciousness, for the answers you already have. Step number 3, the moment you realize, I'm just a student. I'm really just a student of life. And what is life? You are life. Consciousness is life. You study yourself. Step number 4, you realize, actually, to know myself, I have to give of myself. And so I start to share. I start to connect and give and help and guide and coach and teach. And you become a teacher, a guide, a coach, whatever way you want to do it. Step number 5 is the moment you notice there's a gap between what I say and what I'm doing. There's the inauthenticity that sometimes arises. So I become a serious practitioner of spiritual practice, whatever you want to call that, meditation, contemplation, but that's necessary to bridge the gap. Step number 6, in that process I begin to master, be the master, not just of myself, but of the situations in front. Not reacting, not panicking, staying cool, staying calm when everyone else is pressing my buttons, doesn't bother me. I'm okay. I'm chilled. I'm here for you. I'm not avoiding you. I'm here. Mastery. Step number 6, I become the master. And then the day arrives, and I'm pretty sure it will arrive. It does for most, when you realize, actually, hey, there's only one root cause of all the unhappiness, all the sorrows, all the suffering I've ever gone through, and whatever everyone else is going through. Our old friend, the ego. And the ego is just a false sense of self. I think now we go to the table at the back for anyone who has any questions, and I can see a few bubbles, a few heads here. There's a few questions going on, so please do join me at the table at the back. Thanks for coming. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.